So Kevin Feige has recently come out to set the record straight on the current and future states of the MCU. He addressed some of their failures in recent years and how they're going to change that going forward. He also noted the recent success of James Gunn's Superman, proving that there's no such thing as superhero fatigue. So what does that mean for the MCU post-Secret Wars? In this video, I'm going to talk about Kevin Feige's comments on the recent mistakes of the MCU, what his plans are for the future, and if I think that's the right choice or not. But before we get into it, please be sure to give this video a like and subscribe so you don't miss future videos like this. It would really help me and my channel out. Also, disclaimer, all of the comments and quotes that I'm going to be referencing in this video come from a Variety article, so that's my source. Anyway, let's talk about Kevin Feige's comments on the recent failures of the MCU. According to Kevin Feige, quality over quantity was always the priority when building the Infinity Saga, which is a big part of the reason why I think those first three phases worked so well. However, there was a mandate to produce more content, so they did. But audiences quickly became burned out by a surplus of mediocrity. Since the pandemic, only 6 out of 13 movies have grossed $500 million or more worldwide. As opposed to pre-pandemic, every movie did that except for 3, which eventually resulted in one of Marvel's best movies in recent years, The Thunderbolts, to underperform at the box office. Kevin Feige stated that the reason for this is that audiences saw the trailer and were convinced that they needed to watch a bunch of different shows to understand the movie. Which isn't exactly true because John Walker is the only character from a TV series, but I get the idea of what he was trying to say. All of the other characters were either villains or side characters in other MCU movies. None of them have starred in their own movie up until this point. He also said this is an example of people feeling that the MCU was fun at first, but now it feels like they need to see everything to understand the next new thing, which kind of plays into the whole expansion mandate that Kevin Feige was talking about earlier. Disney Plus became a new streaming service after Endgame, and they needed a lot more content to put on that service. Now let's talk about his plans for the future of the MCU. One thing that he said is going to change is the output for Marvel, stating that they're only going to release 3 movies max per year, which is what their peak was back in 2017. He also said that there's going to be a lot less TV shows, and allowing those TV shows to be TV shows, being self-contained stories that don't overlap with the films as much, but still allowing opportunities for those characters from TV to appear in other movies. The example he gave was Punisher appearing in Spider-Man Brand New Day. Another thing he wants to avoid going forward with television is shelving projects. This is something I didn't even know was an issue until I read the article, but apparently Ironheart and the upcoming series Wonder Man have both been completed for over a year before their release. Which kind of makes sense if you think about it, because Ironheart first debuted in Wakanda Forever, which came out in 2022, so if her show was done over a year ago, the proper release should have been somewhere around 2023, striking while the iron's a lot hotter. Those were the only 2 examples he gave when talking about shelving projects, but I think you can kind of connect the dots on other projects. WandaVision, Ms. Marvel, Secret Invasion, and the Marvels are all kind of connected, but they're all pretty spaced out over a 2-year period. This didn't allow for that story to be told as consistently through the years. But one thing that's going to stay the same going forward is diversity. Kevin Feige said that he was always a fan of diversity and DEI before wokeness became a term, stating that casting Iman Vellani was one of the best bits of casting they ever did. So that's still going to be a strong focus for the MCU, but there's just going to be overall less output with movies and TV shows in general, which is great. I've been loving the diverse storytelling that Marvel has been doing. Another thing that's going to stay the same is the Marvel formula of movie making. He contrasted the MCU to James Gunn's new DCU. If you don't know, James Gunn said that no project is going to be greenlit unless they have a finished script that everyone loves. Marvel does not make movies like that. Kevin Feige has said they've never shot a movie with a finished script because they want to allow room for improvisation and changes that can happen throughout production. This has some pros and some cons. The first Iron Man movie is probably the best example of showing that this style of filmmaking can be successful because they did a lot of improv on the day of, which audiences really enjoyed. The natural feeling banter felt so authentic that it's part of the reason why that movie is so popular. However, this also results in a lot of reshoots and pushing back release dates, which cost money. Which leads me into the next thing, and that is cheaper budgets for movies. He said post-Endgame that it was so easy for movies' budgets to balloon from $200 to $250+ million, and he's definitely trying to cut down on that. He said that they've already been implementing this with movies like Deadpool and Wolverine and Fantastic Four: First Steps, stating that those movies' budgets have been almost a third of what movies' budgets have been just 2 years ago. He also said that he met with the creative team of 2023's The Creator, a really impressive original sci-fi movie that only had a budget of $80 million. I think this also forces Marvel to commit to a vision by building sets and shooting on location, instead of having to rely on countless visual effects to kind of fix and morph this really hollow, open project. I also want to mention his comments regarding Kang, because he says some interesting things that I don't know if I fully agree with them. He mentioned that they were already planning to move away from Kang even before the whole Jonathan Majors fiasco happened, stating that he even met with Robert Downey Jr. to possibly return as Victor Von Doom before the release of Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. And I just don't know if I believe that. He said the reason for these discussions were that they realized that Kang isn't a Thanos-level threat, that the only character that could even live up to Thanos is Doctor Doom. And even though I kind of believe that, I would argue that one, a lot of people didn't know who Thanos was prior to Avengers 1, and they built that character up through many movies in the Infinity Saga, meaning that you could have done the same thing for King the Conqueror. And two, Disney acquired Fox in 2019. So the same year that Endgame came out, Marvel acquired the rights to the Fantastic Four and the X-Men, so they could have already been planting the seeds for Doctor Doom at the start of Phase 4 to really build that character up. So saying that like right after Tony Stark dies in your universe, you went back to the actor to be the big bad, I don't know, I just don't really buy that. But it doesn't really matter because at the end of the day, Jonathan Majors would still be in those legal troubles, so they were fucked either way. Now the question at hand. Should the MCU reboot after Secret Wars? Well, Kevin Feige did say that they are going to do a soft reboot after Secret Wars, saying, quote, "Reboot is a scary word. Reboot can mean a lot of things to a lot of people. Reset, singular timeline, we're thinking along those lines." So it sounds like he's just going to try to wrangle in all the loose ends of the MCU and make things more streamlined, which I think is a great idea. But even though I think rebooting after Secret Wars is the right thing, I'd be lying if I said that I didn't have some concerns. First off, are you going to recast every role? We already know that you're rebooting the Fantastic Four and the X-Men, so that's all fine and dandy. But what about characters like Tony Stark and Steve Rogers? Well, Kevin Feige did say that they're planning to recast those characters down the line. He said it's a difficult task, but not impossible, comparing the task of recasting Iron Man and Captain America to recasting Sean Connery in James Bond. I really don't know how I feel about this. If you're only going to keep some characters and recast others, I think that would definitely confuse audiences. But if you recast every character, I think overall that would make more sense for the universe, but that would really suck for the characters who haven't gotten a lot of the spotlight. Take any characters introduced after Endgame. Shang-Chi, She-Hulk, The Eternals, Moon Knight, Echo, Kate Bishop, Ironheart, Agatha Harkness. Whether you love these characters or not, they've only gotten a few hours of screen time, and that's it. They also just brought back a bunch of characters from the Netflix Daredevil universe, and that would kind of suck if you bring them all back just to reboot them in like 3 years. Not to mention, we're finally getting a grounded Tom Holland Spider-Man movie, and that would be such a shame if they immediately reboot him. Kevin Feige was asked on the possibility of seeing characters like Charlize Theron's Clea, Sacha Baron Cohen's Mephisto, and Harry Styles' Star Fox. And he made the comparison of Samuel Stern's character returning after over a decade in Captain America: Brave New World, and William Donlow from the Mission Impossible franchise, saying, quote, "This is fun to me, so let's talk again in 12 years and see who comes back." So that implies that the reboot will be softer than I originally thought if these characters are going to come back in a decade. Side note, I thought Doctor Strange and Clea's story would kind of merge and fold into the Secret War storyline because it has to do with an incursion, but maybe that's not the case. So wait, what exactly is getting rebooted? We already know the Fantastic Four and the X-Men are going to be rebooted, that's fine. Are those going to be the main characters they focus on going forward? I would love that, but I don't know how much these characters can power a franchise. Hear me out. Let's take Marvel's 3 movies max per year, and let's say that they pump out an X-Men movie every other year. That's just being generous. Maybe also you could do a Wolverine solo movie or a Magneto solo movie. But I don't think people are gonna line up for like a Beast solo movie or an Iceman solo movie. The cool thing about the X-Men is that they're a team, and it's cool to see how their powers work with one another. And hey, I would love to see like a Nightcrawler series, but that would contradict what Kevin Feige said about letting TV be TV and not expanding those stories into film. If Nightcrawler gets some character growth in his show, and that plays a role in the next X-Men movie, that is exactly the type of thing that they're trying to avoid. So what other movies are going to be releasing alongside the Fantastic Four and the X-Men? It's kind of difficult to imagine, because if the last few phases have shown us anything, it's that they're not prioritizing any characters. With a few exceptions, none of the characters from phases 4 or 5 interact with one another or appear in multiple things. Kevin Feige himself said that those phases were about expansion. I really do think that you need characters like Iron Man, Captain America, Hulk, and Thor, but the MCU has just not been prioritizing those characters. I mean, you already have a lot of the pieces. Bring back Hulk and Thor, add Sam Wilson's Captain America, Yelena's Black Widow, Kate Bishop's Hawkeye, and you almost have the core 6 Avengers again. At least that's something. On the flip side, if the MCU did reboot characters that have already been introduced in the MCU, what stories are there to tell? Every MCU project is based on the comics of those characters. Maybe they're not directly adapting certain storylines, but they're definitely adapting enough elements from the comics to the point where it might be difficult to tell new stories with the same characters. For example, Captain America is one of, if not the best character in the MCU. Seeing his character arc change throughout all the movies based on his experiences with agencies and organizations is my favorite thing about the MCU. So if you reboot Steve Rogers, what are you going to do? The same thing? If not, that's pretty bold to assume that you can outdo your amazing work that you already did with that character. Like, the Winter Soldier is a pretty big part of Captain America lore. So are you just gonna redo that arc again? Are you just not gonna do it at all? Currently, the Winter Soldier is a pretty popular character because of the MCU. I'm not saying it's impossible. Personally, I would love to see a Captain America story that takes place during World War II, where he maybe meets T'Challa's grandfather, who is that version of the Black Panther. But then again, we already got a Captain America movie set during World War II, and it also seems like we're gonna get a video game based on what I just said. So I don't even know. And speaking of storylines, the MCU actually have already adapted a lot of storylines and characters from the comics, even if they're not incredibly faithful. They did the Infinity Gauntlet storyline, they pretty much did the Avengers Disassembled storyline, Civil War, Secret Invasion, Secret Wars, the Dark/New Avengers. Again, not incredibly faithfully, but they still did them. They adapted story arcs like the Winter Soldier, Extremis, Planet Hulk, the Mighty Thor, Gore the God Butcher, and big bads like Loki, Red Skull, Ultron, Thanos, Kang, Baron Zemo, and the Skrulls. So let's say they actually do a full reboot, taking a page out of James Gunn's DCU by just dropping us in an established universe. Plus, you spent the last 20 years doing origin stories, so we're all caught up. What stories are you going to tell? Again, I'm not saying it's impossible because there are a lot of stories to tell from Marvel Comics, but if they were to retread any ground on any story elements from the comics they've already adapted into the MCU, I feel like you're doing a disservice to those projects that previously adapted that material. Or if you do decide to retell a story thinking that you can adapt it better or more faithfully, why didn't you just do that the first time? Now, since Marvel has the rights to more characters, maybe redoing some stories like Secret Invasion or Civil War could really work, and this could also open the opportunity to get stories like House of M and Avengers vs. X-Men. So yeah, in conclusion, I am excited for the future of the MCU, and I do think that a reboot is the way to go, but I just don't think a soft reset is the way to do it. But what do you think? Should the MCU reboot after 20 years of storytelling? Or should they keep the story going by slowly rebooting and recasting these new characters? Let me know in the comments below. If you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. Please be sure to give this video a like and subscribe so you don't miss my next video. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.